Oh no, Mel. That was a nice nap. Now down to business. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Time and the Rani, written by Pip and Jane Baker and is directed by Andrew Morgan. This is the first story of the 7th Doctor era, right after John Nathan Turner was forced to fire Colin Baker, who played the 6th Doctor. Basically what happened was that John Nathan Turner desperately wanted to leave, and Michael Grade gave him an opportunity. He would give his contract away if only he was the one who told Colin Baker that his services were no longer required. John Nathan Turner really hated the prospect and really just found it a really disgusting thing to do. However, he wanted to leave the series, he wanted to move on to bigger and better projects, and so he fired Colin Baker. Now, John Nathan Turner was about to head off. However, Michael Grade basically was like, okay, but if you leave, Doctor Who is cancelled. We're not getting a replacement for you. Which was totally against what John Nathan Turner was originally thought. He basically thought he was going to be replaced. And so he's supposed to go on leave for a bit before going back to the BBC to work on a completely new show. He had Pip and Jane Baker write an episode just in case they had to do a regeneration story for Colin Baker. However, of course, that didn't turn out as planned. And basically, the series was in a massive rush to get a new season running with John Nathan Turner. Now, Eric Saywood was quit after the Trial of the Time Lord season because he wasn't happy with how John Nathan Turner was handling things. And so with this story actually technically debuts new script writer Andrew Cartnell. However, he had very little to work on this story. When he got the role, he was a complete newbie to BBC script editing. He was mostly known for writing comic books, and he also is known for very heavily political storylines, which we'll get onto later. However, when he got on board, basically Pip and Jane Baker's script was almost complete, with very differences between the Rani and obviously the new Doctor now has to be started the introduction. This would be his introduction story. Now, a thing with every 7th Doctor story is that they are extremely political, which is nothing bad. I mean, some of the best stories are heavily political. I mean, 7th Doctor has some of the best stories. But what makes Andrew Cartnell's time on the show so unique in a way is that his political stance on the show is that he absolutely hated the Prime Minister at the time, Margaret Thatcher. And so it is true that every story in the 7th Doctor era is basically him going up against either a Margaret Thatcher stand-in or a political stance that she holds. So, to say that the 7th Doctor era is one-sided is beyond comprehensive. I mean, again, I'm not knocking it. I mean, there is a lot of criticisms towards Margaret Thatcher, and using storytelling, especially Doctor Who, to give out this was a really good idea. I just wish that they had more time to develop these ideas and these themes in these stories, because Time in the Rani is known for being one of the, if not the worst classic Doctor Who story. In fact, I'll tell you how bad it got. It got so bad that by the time episode 2 aired, there was there was a show, I can't remember what it's called. It's actually on the DVD. You can, at least they talk about it in a documentary. Basically, back in those times, they had BBC had a show where they basically tell a lot of truth. So if like a show was getting critically panned, they would get like the producers and all that and be like, right, a lot of people have criticisms with this. How are you going to respond to that? Which I think we should really start doing again. Basically, that's what the internet's doing. I don't know why this show was cancelled. But anyway, this particular story was so heavily panned that halfway during the story's airing, just call it Sylvester McCoy's first story. They were on this show have to respond to fans' criticisms, with a lot of fans stating this is the death of the show, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, they've killed Doctor Who. Yeah, that hasn't aged very well. And of course there's a lot of criticisms with it. And God bless them, Bonnie Langford and Sylvester McCoy got on the show. They were on the show with John Nathan Turner, and they're like, okay, we understand, we'll try and do better. We're sorry that you didn't like Time in the Rani. In fact, in this documentary, you would call Sylvester McCoy stated that like he can feel that something was wrong whilst they were making it. That there was no real direction for his Doctor. There was a lot of criticism with the Colin Baker era of violence, and so to try and make people forget about the violence, they relied heavily on humour, which we'll get on to. However, there was a comment made by John Nathan Turner which really haunted the show for the rest of 3 years until its cancellation in 1989, in which he stated that everybody had their own eras, that the ones that they really love, and what he says is basically that fans, they cloud their judgment because they have an era that they so like. So anything that's different, they become really critical with it, and not really focusing on the story itself or anything, just more of a style and a theme. And I'm summarising, but that's basically what he said. And a lot of people at the time absolutely hated these comments. And Time in the Rani still hasn't held up very well. It's still a lot of people's least favourite. But a lot of stories that were heavily criticised when they came out now have become popular. So, though I think the way he said it might have come off a bit of aggressive towards the fan base, and this is going to be something really controversial here. I kind of see his point. I do understand where he's coming from. I mean, the Seventh Doctor himself, a lot of people, when these episodes were airing, considered every single story to be bad. In fact, I didn't grow up on the Seventh Doctor. The person who made me watch them on VHS, he wasn't a fan of the Seventh Doctor. He didn't like Sylvester McCoy, he just didn't like the show, how it was run, and blah. And he didn't like any stories until I started watching them for myself, and there were a few I liked, and I convinced this person to get along into them. But now a lot of Sylvester McCoy stories, especially the Dalek one, Ghostlight, go watch Ghostlight, and Survival are considered some of the best stories in the show. Oh, and Curse of Fendrick as well. Curse of Fendrick is a very popular one as well. But anyway, I've kind of rambled on a bit. Let's get on to the actual story itself, shall we? So, right off the bat, we get some really cringy CGI, early CGI. The CGI here is done by Cal Videos. Now, Cal Videos are the pioneers, one of the first studio-based that worked completely with CGI. They also made the intro to the new intro, which was also completely CGI or computer generated, shall we say, because CGI makes people think more modern technology. But anyway, and I must admit, I do kind of have a soft spot for the actual intro, especially that music. I used to hate it, but the more I listen to it, the more I get into it. And now it's one of my favourites, mainly because the middle eight is in the actual intro, which is a very rare occasion. So that's really cool. The story starts off with the TARDIS landing on the planet Lakersha, seemingly being beamed down after the TARDIS has been attacked by some located radiation, which is something which is explained in the audio drama A Brink of Death, which we tackled, which leads into this story. But that's never actually explained in the story. And we get the Rani appears. She was in the title, there's no surprises there. And she states, it's like, leave the girl, it's the man I want. As a tent trap, a creature of hers, pushes the Doctor face upwards. And we see the regeneration, and oh my god, this regeneration is horrible. You can clearly tell it's Sylvester McCoy in a wig. There's no two ways about it. Now, the story then takes the Rani up to her secret her base in Lakersha, where she basically is working on some sort of secret project as the Doctor's sleeping, and he wakes up and he's really energetic. And we get our first inklings of the Seventh Doctor. Now, Sylvester McCoy, like Colin Baker, was actually a very controversial choice when it was announced that he was cast. For those of you who don't know, Sylvester McCoy was originally known for his very physical comedy sketches. Like he did some work, I believe, in Blue Peter, or a show that's like Blue Peter. He did a lot of great theatre work for deaf children, so he's just an absolute legend. But most notably before this, he was known to be playing the Pied Piper in a theatre production of the Pied Piper. And he's known for being very, very physical with his arms like this, and very, like, he likes moving around and jumping around and doing pant falls, which is when you make yourself fall. So basically he's like a clown. Now, I think it's really unfair to judge Sylvester McCoy's performance on Time in the Rani. Like I stated, there were many behind-the-scenes issues that really hindered his Doctor, and he was basically told, just do humour, just do humour. Fun fact: Sylvester McCoy actually states that his first season, in terms of him as an actor, is his favourite because he got to do what he wanted to do. Later seasons, he would have, basically his character would do a complete 180. He was a bit more self-controlled and like the chess master. But here, the Doctor is like a Charlie Chaplin. In fact, Sylvester McCoy has stated that his inspiration for his Doctor was Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, which is very ironic because William Hartnell has stated numerous times that it was watching the films of Charlie Chaplin that got him into acting and wanted him to be appearing in TV and film. So it all comes back in full circle. But like I said, it's really harsh to judge Sylvester McCoy's performance on this story because it doesn't really represent his Doctor in later stories. And like I said, the directing that he was given in this was basically not. But I personally did not like the Seventh Doctor in this. you kind of watch it as, I hate using the word cringe. Ironically, the word cringe makes me cringe. And that sentence makes me cringe, which in its of itself makes me cringe. So, yeah, that's a kind of a paradox. But, yeah, I don't know. Something about it it just feels like pantomime. It feels amateur. A great example as well is the directing. Andrew Morgan's first Doctor Who, and the budget was cut short. He had very little time to work with, though. I don't really blame him, but my God, this story looks horrible. There's some really great quarry shots, but the inside studios just look, they are shot way too light-hearted and a bit too clean, which gives the story a children's theatre feeling, which really doesn't work. And obviously, I think as well, what really hinders this story is the script. So basically what happens is, in terms of the plot, is after the Doctor's captured by one of the tent traps, these strange humanoid bat creatures with 4 eyes. I believe it's one in the front, 2 on the side, and 1 at the back. I've never seen a creature like that. I think they're a really good design, but the actual production of them comes off extremely, I don't want to say cheap. This is going to sound like a criticism. I mean, it is a criticism, but it makes me, when I watch it, it reminds me a lot of like the Power Ranger baddies. There's like the silly costumes and stuff, which I think really works for Power Rangers when you got like these really, but not really for Doctor Who. And basically, the Rani gives the Doctor an amnesia thing, which makes the Doctor forget his memories. And what the Rani then does is she dresses up like Mel. The Mel gets saved by one of the Lacertians from the TARDIS, originally planning to use her as a trade-off as a prisoner, because he originally thought that she was working for them, but later on they find out that no, Mel is one of the good guys. And the story mainly revolves around the Doctor trying to remember stuff, whilst the Rani, dressed up as Mel, tries to convince the Doctor to work on this machine that the Rani's been working on. And yeah, the script really isn't good. There's a lot of trying quick dialogue, which kind of makes it feels like you can easily feel like the writers were like, okay, we need quick dialogue, so on the bright side on this, on the flip side, it means that this story is not boring. If there's one thing you cannot criticize Time in the Rani, is that it's boring. This story moves at such a fast pace, and you get a lot of action, a lot of scenery. That there's a lot of action, there's a lot of things going on, there's a lot of dialogue being quick. You see all these actors like worming around and giving these big emotional like suggestions and all that, which might not work to try and get you into a serious drama. It feels like everybody on the set is like, okay, there's nothing really strong here. Let's just and get on with it. But it's still very interesting to watch. I mean, like Sylvester McCoy, he's a very physical actor, so you get a lot of great physical motions. It just doesn't tie up well with the character of the Doctor. He even actually does the Charlie Chaplin like slide at some points. One of them is actually in the foreground, right in front of the camera, and I think twice it's in like the background where like it doesn't really the camera doesn't really focus on. One of the actual aspects of the story, which is one of those things where it's so ridiculous, it's so bafflingly stupid that it's incredibly funny, is the traps that the Rani sets up. So, but first of all, I think we need to set out who the Rani actually is to explain why I personally find this incredibly funny. The Rani is not the master. Unlike the master, who enjoys the pain and suffering and wants to control all so he can have his a universe in his own image and wants to conquer all and stuff, the Rani doesn't really have any sentiment like that. She just thinks about the science, and everybody else is just really a pawn. There's actually a great line in this where she's like, should my science stop for the sake of just some few lesser beings? Would you stop walking in fear of squishing some ants and bugs? That's actually a really great line. It sets up the Rani. The Rani in this story, I'm a bit 50-50. With her first appearance, Mark of the Rani, she was kind of played up like, she was the villain in that story. But the way her character was set up was that she's this she's not really an evil person, she's just sort of amoral, who, in a way, if the Doctor is the angel and the Master is the devil, then she is the one that they're whispering their ears to. And I think with that concept, we could have had a really great character. Sadly, in Mark of the Rani, we only really saw her being influenced by the Master. We never really seen her get influenced by the Doctor. And here, despite her, now that the Master's gone, and despite that she still has that inkling of she's not really in it to conquer the universe, she's just doing it in the mind of science. Here she comes off as just like a proper cliched villain, a female master. Not to say that she doesn't have her moments of using logic to justify her means and in the pursuit of science, but especially when we find out her plan and her actions in the story makes her come off a little bit more like, I am the villain and you will obey me kind of attitude. But yeah, so basically the Rani is a character who's more logical than the majority of the Doctor's villains. So she has these traps, these just wires attached to these bombs. Now, if you're a logical person, you would think, right, you set these traps, people go on it, boom, they're dead. Yes? Okay. But no, the Rani decides to have fun and overkill it. You see, you get trapped onto these, you trip these tripwires, and you don't just die. You get caught in a force field, a bubble, like so and so high, and it spins around at a mass speed as the occupants inside it start screaming their heads off as they spin around. And then the bubble shield goes up into the air, bounces down where it triggers the explosion and just... and it's just absolute overkill. And it's stupid. You watch it and you're just like, what the hell am I watching? It's really ridiculous, but my God, is it not the funniest thing I've ever seen. Later on, the Rani tries to get equipment from the Doctor's TARDIS, so she convinces the Doctor to go into the TARDIS, where we get the traditional costume change scene, to which we get the Seventh Doctor's costume. Now, personally, I really like the Seventh Doctor's costume. I don't even actually mind the jumper of the question marks. I think it comes off as a nutty professor on holiday look, and I think that really does actually work for the Doctor. I even personally don't mind the pullovers on over the jumper. I think that actually really suits the Doctor, especially Sylvester McCoy's Doctor. Sylvester McCoy was very critical with the question mark sweat jumper, and constantly asked for him to have it removed, which sadly he didn't get until the TV movie. But I actually personally really like it. Yeah, there's nothing really much I can talk about that. And so Mel works with the Lacurtians as the Doctor, as memories start slowly picking up together. There's a scene in which the Rani traps the Doctor in her laboratory so that the Doctor can keep working out distractions. We also get a scene of Sylvester McCoy, who was very fond of playing the spoons as a musical instrument. Actually plays some spoons in this story. Yeah, I have nothing really to talk about that. I thought I had something to say about that, but no, nothing really. And he then meets up with the real Mel, who he believes is the Rani. And when they first set off this scene, it is really bad. They're kind of like fighting each other, doing these like really over-the-top gymnastic things whilst they're talking to each other about like, you're not the Doctor, you're the Rani, stop trying to trick me, kind of stuff. However, it does lead into a really nice scene in which after they had to check their pulses so that the Doctor can prove that he's a Time Lord, and to prove to her that and she to prove to him that she is Mel and not the Rani. And I actually genuinely like the scene in which, after the Doctor feels her pulse, he puts her hands up and he looks up to her and he's like, Mel? And then she's like, Doctor, it really is you. I knew about generation, of course, but I mean, everything's different about you. Your personality, your appearance, nothing has stuck. And the Doctor's kind of sad and moping about it, stating that like it's regeneration, it's a lottery, and he's got the short straw, basically. I actually genuinely like that scene. Despite my criticisms with many Doctor Who story, I always state that there's always at least one thing I genuinely like about each story, apart from one story which we'll soon be getting onto. And this is my favourite scene in this. This is a really good, it's a very short scene, but it really does work. And so the Rani comes back as Mel hides away. But she kind of quickly figures out that the Doctor now knows. And Rani basically sets up her plan that there is a meteor coming around composed of strange matter. We don't actually know what this strange matter entails. The Doctor actually states at one point that strange matter is something that was discovered in 1986, I believe it was. I don't know if it's a real thing. I hope it is, because I really want to know what the hell strange matter is. Is it antimatter? Is it normal matter? What is strange matter? And the Rani basically has this brain that she's basically been kidnapping famous geniuses. We actually get the first chronological appearance of the Doctor meeting Albert Einstein, even if it's for only a brief moment gets processed into the Rani's machine, putting their minds into this. I can't remember what she calls it. It's like the lullabub. And what this brain is going to do is that she's going to explode this strange matter meteor, which will send chronot particles, the particles of time, onto the atmosphere. And when it touches the atmosphere, it will then become a component called helium-2. And apparently this helium-2 will allow the Rani to change the order of creation. Whatever the hell that means. Basically, I don't know. She explains at one point that it would allow her the ability to be like, right, she doesn't like the humans, so she's going to go back in time and change the evolution state so that the dinosaurs will live out their full potential. Which is kind of strange because we get two Rani stories where dinosaurs is a prominent thing. In Mark of the Rani, she has one in her TARDIS, or at least a fetus of one, and that one grows to an extent. And now she mentions dinosaurs. So Rani just really likes dinosaurs. That's a nice little fact about the Rani. She loves dinosaurs. And she puts the Doctor's brain in originally, but this gives the brain a schizophrenic attitude, as the Doctor's personality is way too bombastic for the whole thing. The Doctor getting out of the machine and stuff actually ruins kind of like Rani's plan, and so she starts heading off as this missile, which is going to destroy the strange matter, gets alternated by the Doctor, who takes the prison ankles of the Lacertians, which would kill them by exploding, and he puts them around the brain, which controls the rocket. And this was, and one of the Lacertians stay there to basically make sure that all the bombs set off and killing the brain, which he dies in the process. Now here's a fun fact. In the original script, when this was a Sixth Doctor adventure, this would have been the trigger of his regeneration. He was going to stay there behind the brain to watch it explode, only for this explosion to kill him and start triggering off his regeneration. That's a little fun fact. However, the meteor misses the rocket, saving the day, and the Rani goes back into her TARDIS, where she is actually captured by some Tentraps who discovered that she basically planned to leave him on this planet to die whilst the strange matter gets changed into helium-2, creating mass havoc on the planet, killing every life form on it. And so they basically hijacked her TARDIS, and the last scene we see of them is the Tentraps basically holding her up as prisoner. The story then ends with the Seventh Doctor and Mel heading off into the TARDIS. And the Doctor and Mel is like, it's going to be really strange getting used to this new Doctor. As the Doctor states, yes, but don't worry, we'll get there in the end. We'll get there. We'll all learn to adapt to change. Ending Time and the Rani. And there you go, that's Time and the Rani. Overall, if we're talking about a critical looking at this story, I think a majority of people would agree with me that this story isn't really any good. It had really nothing to say, apart from really the Rani having some resemblance to Margaret Thatcher. It doesn't really deal with anything the story isn't about anything, it's just sort of fluff until the very end where the Rani explains her plan of using this brain to force these intelligent people to become a weapon for her. But yeah, it doesn't really have much to say, and it does kind of, in terms of just pure plot, it does kind of feel like the story doesn't know what it wants to do. So we just get some really over dramatic scenes of the Doctor and Mel and the Lacurtians until later on in the story, until halfway part 3 and part 4. But, big but, it is incredibly, enormously hilarious in that it's so dramatically bad, in my opinion, that I can't help and watch and laugh of it. Now, before I end this video, I want to state that there are a few people who do like Time in the Rani, that they do think this is a genuinely good story. And if you're one of those people, more power to you. It does have a few things going for it. Like I stated, I really like the scene when the Seventh Doctor feels Mel's pulse and they basically realise, and there's a really slow moment there. I really like that scene. But I think it's not really a controversial thing to say that for the majority of people, it's not a particularly loved story. I find it so bad that it's good. In the same way that you would watch The Room or Trolls 2, or with me, Venom. I found Venom an incredibly funny, bad film. But this is an incredibly funny, bad Doctor Who story. And I do want to also state that the Seventh Doctor era gets a lot better. If you watched this and thought, right, this isn't for me, please, I beg of you, stick with it. His Doctor improves dramatically, especially when we get into his next companion and we see the stories with him and the companion and the last classic companion. But for now, we've got to say hello to the Seventh Doctor. We have to say goodbye to the Rani, and I'll see you next time for the next episode where we go into audio territory as the Doctor is still suffering from post-regeneration stuff. So see you next time for Unregenerated, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!